Okay, champ. Today I'm going to go over some of the strategies that I use when I'm making lineups, and I've heard a lot of people say that they have struggled this year with the NBA, and I think people are just getting away from the basics, and a lot of people are playing and making more educated picks, and it's making it harder to win. I've seen point totals in GPP where you have to have over 300 to even cash. And then I've seen cash lineups where you've had to have, over 375 or 275 to cash. So we've seen some higher totals this year, which is great. But you're also seeing, I feel like everybody's doing the same thing. So I'm coming up with some strategies here that have worked for me over the past few weeks since I've been trying these. And I wanted to share them with everybody just so you can make some more educated picks. I'm not going to give you my picks today. I'm just going to show you how to make picks yourself. So first thing I like to do is to stack a particular game. So if I'm going here, I'm going to stack this first game, and I'm going to play all of the players from this game. You can see the guys at the top. You want to try to have some exposure to them, and then try to pick a couple value plays from this particular game, and then pick your, you might have 1 to 2 spots remaining, then pick them from a different game. So stacking this game, what that does is it gives you exposure to these guys when, if they get into like a shootout where, teams are just running the floor a little bit more than what it was expected. They get into where they're just scoring back and forth and a lot of turnovers and really running the floor and putting a lot of points. This gives you exposure to that game when everybody else may only have 1 to 2 players in that game. You have everyone in this game. Now, I would not use this strategy if I'm playing 1 or 2 lineups. I wouldn't just stack a game. This is only if you're playing several lineups. You're playing, let's say you're playing 20 lineups a night, then I would have exposure, especially on a 5-game slate. I would play a stack where I stacked each game individually. The other upside to this is if this game were to go into overtime, then you have exposure to these guys for having a bunch of minutes, and it's just going to accelerate your lineup straight to the top. And like I said, it's a really good strategy if you are playing multiple lineups. Now, you may want to do this like if you know a game's going to be a really tight game and it's supposed to be fast-paced, and it's going to be a game that is really moving, it's a really close game, and it has a very high point total. Yeah, you may want to have more exposure to those guys anyway in your normal 1-game lineup. But I'm saying even on a slow-paced game, we want to, in a low point total, still stack it, because you never know what that game's actually going to look like, especially with the number of people that have been out. You never know what the games are going to look like. So it's a good time to really do that if you're making several lineups. The next strategy that I like to do is, instead of, and I'll use this, which is not the best example, but we'll look at it with the Dallas game here. And let's go to the guard. All right, so Luka's out, and everybody knows that Brunson's the backup. Now, let's just say for this example that Brunson is out as well. Okay, so we have the top point guards out, because Brunson's not really a backup. He's good enough to start at most places. He's just in there, and he's kind of the bench guy that comes off and just brings all the hype when he comes in. So he's not a really good example for this. He can start at Dallas, no problem. So let's say he's out, and our next person in line is most likely going to be Burke. So, which I heard they signed somebody new, but we'll look at that later. So Burke is in here, and let's say that Brunson's out, Luka's out, so Burke's going to be getting 30 minutes tonight. Well, a lot of people will just come in and click Burke and say, all right, we are going to go all in on Burke. Okay, and it looks like, when he does play higher minutes, he seems to get quite a bit of points here. It may be a good pick, but it's not always this way. If you got a guy that's not been in this situation very much, and you go and look and he's playing 25 minutes and he's only getting 10 fantasy points, don't go in and play him just because he's going to have a chance to get 30 minutes tonight. Okay, so stay back off of that. Now, in this particular situation, if Burke was to start, I would probably have some exposure to Burke, but I'm also going to have exposure to Russell, because we're looking at, with Beverly being out, and Beverly usually handles the ball. Russell's the shooting guard. But with Beverly being out, I'm expecting Russell to be the primary ball carrier. So that means that Burke has got to play defense on Russell. And when that's the case, Russell is probably going to have his way. So I'm always looking, first thing I look at is the backup. But everybody that plays DraftKings and fantasy sports, they're looking for that backup. So you'll see if Brunson and Luka were out, Burke would probably be 25 to 35% owned in a DraftKings contest, like the major GPPs, which is great. But you also need to come look up at Russell in this situation. If it wasn't Russell, I'll be looking at Beverly because Beverly's going to be one handling the ball, but if he's out today as well. So I would look at the one that's going to be like whoever Burke's going to guard, and I'm probably going to have exposure to them because Burke is not going to play the type of defense that Brunson plays. So I think that gives those guys a chance to really go off. And like I said, it's all situational. Don't just automatically go in and be like, oh, Burke's starting, let's go the opposite way. But look at how these guys, like how much exposure they're going to, how much offense they usually produce. And then think about the fact that if the backup is guarding them, how does that look? And like I said, Brunson plays pretty decent defense. Brunson's probably better than Luka at defense. And then Burke, who probably hasn't played a ton of defense because he doesn't get a lot of playing time, Beverly's probably going to have his way with him. So, be thinking that type of situation. Point guards is the one I really like to look at. The other ones, like all these other positions, it's hard to do because they can switch around. Like it's easy to switch a shooting guard with a small forward. Like you can easily switch up who's guarding who, and that changes. Point guard, most of the time, the other opposing team's point guard is going to be guarding the point guard. That's not always the case, but most of the time that's the way it works. And the one where it really makes a difference is center. So we're looking at, what these guys. Let's say Randall's out. If Randall's out, then I'm automatically going to go down and look to who is there because Randall's such a big force inside that if he's out, then there's nobody on that team that can probably step in and handle Stewart right now. And Stewart, I mean, it would play better if we had like if Embiid was going against him, and there's nobody on the team that can stop Embiid. So if the person that Embiid is going up against is out and they just have backups in there, then I would be all over Embiid for that game. Okay, and like I said, it's all situational. So here's Towns. See, and like I like this type of situation too, where Dwight Powell, when he's in, he does well, but he only plays like 10 minutes a game, and then you have Towns who's going against him tonight. Well, he's probably going to have a good game with all these injuries, and then you're looking at nobody on Dallas that can stop him. So he's probably going to have his way tonight, and there's nobody that can stop it. And that's the kind of stuff I'm looking for is, exposure to guys that are just, and yes, he's expensive, but for good reason to me. And we're looking at guys that really, like who's going to be able to stop who. And looking at this looks like fun too, with all these injuries, and just trying to see what that's going to look like. But that's what I like to look for. I like to look at the point guards and I like to look at the centers, because there's some forces in centers that you just can't stop, and it really puts a big exposure mark to me to those guys that where the backup is playing a superstar, and it makes a big difference. So those are the games that you typically see those guys go off. And then the only bad part about it is there is still that chance that it's going to be a blowout, and Embiid doesn't play the whole fourth quarter because they're up by 30, and that does happen too. But just be thinking about that. And those are two of the strategies that I really like. And if you use something different that you feel like is more successful, please share it in the comments below. If you like what I'm saying, make sure you give us a thumbs up. and I will be coming through and making some of my picks for today and putting them in the shorts, so they should be coming up. If you are following the channel, they should notify you that they are there, and it'll be closer to game time, so you'll have to have the notifications on to be able to see those before lock. Like I said, like and comment. Good luck tonight.